Have you ever felt like you're playing a game where you were never taught the rules? A game of love and connection that feels less like a sacred dance and more like a constant draining performance. You give your all, you strive, you bend, you break, only to find yourself standing in the ruins of what you thought was a fortress, wondering how the very ground you built your world upon could turn to sand. You are not alone. This confusion, this deep ache of misunderstanding, is a sacred sign that you are on the verge of a profound awakening. The reality you've been shown is not the whole truth. If this message resonates deep within your soul, if you feel that pull of recognition, let the universe know you're ready by affirming, "I am awake," in the comments. Subscribe and join a tribe of souls who are choosing to see beyond the veil, because what you are about to discover will permanently alter the frequency of your reality. You must understand, the love that society has sold you, the love depicted in films and sung about in ballads, is a beautiful illusion designed to mask a far more powerful and impersonal divine mechanism. Imagine for a moment that every romantic encounter, every spark of attraction, is not a random collision of two souls, but a carefully orchestrated event guided by a force that existed long before you drew your first breath. This is not a force that cares for your personal happiness or your fairy tale endings. It is the raw, untamed, and relentless will of life itself, a cosmic energy whose sole purpose is to perpetuate, to strengthen, and to evolve. You believed you were being offered a gift, a sacred connection that would complete you, but in truth, you were stepping onto a stage, playing a role in a divine drama that has been unfolding for millennia. You entered this agreement not through naivety, but because your very soul was encoded to respond to this call, a call that promises union but often delivers a trial by fire. You were conditioned from birth by every story you heard and every expectation you absorbed to never question the nature of this force, to accept its terms without question, to believe its illusions were the ultimate reality. This cosmic energy operates through a law of spiritual and biological selection, a silent, unyielding current that flows through all of creation. And in the sacred dance of masculine and feminine energies, the feminine is often the conduit for this powerful selective force. Her nature is not designed to love in the way your idealistic heart imagines it. Her divine blueprint is to filter, to test, to select, to constantly gauge the strength, the alignment, and the evolutionary potential of the masculine energy she encounters. It is her sacred duty to seek out and align with the highest, most potent vibration, the energy that promises the strongest future for the continuation of consciousness. This is not a conscious choice filled with malice or betrayal. It is an instinct as deep and impersonal as the ocean's tide, an ancient mandate from source energy itself. She is not seeking the best man in a moral sense. She is instinctively drawn to the most aligned man in an energetic sense, the man whose frequency at that very moment represents the greatest evolutionary advantage. And the moment that frequency wavers, the moment your energy signature signals stagnation or a descent into a lower vibration, the cosmic current will seek a new path. This is the great trial of the unawakened masculine. You live under the weight of this constant, invisible evaluation, a perpetual test you didn't even know you were taking. You mistake her biological signals, her intuitive tests, for the poetry of personal romance. You become an actor, performing for an approval that is conditional and fleeting, a validation that is not truly hers to give, but belongs to the impersonal force that moves through her. You build your identity not on the bedrock of your own sovereign self, but on the shifting sands of her perception of you. You believe that what binds you together is passion, a unique and unbreakable bond. But in reality, what binds you is her instinct's temporary approval of your current energetic state. When this approval is withdrawn, there will be no grand discussion, no dramatic confrontation. On a soul level, you will simply cease to be necessary for her evolutionary path. The very person who swore you were the love of their life will walk away from your emotional remains as if they were stepping over a fallen leaf, because for the universal law she embodies, the season has simply changed. It's not cruelty, it's a cosmic recalibration. It's pure, unfiltered biology, a spiritual law that operates with the same indifference as fire consuming wood. This is where the sting of solitude becomes an overwhelming tempest. The abandonment you feel is not just physical, it is an invisible abandonment, a spiritual disconnection that often occurs long before the final goodbye. It happens while she is still beside you, smiling, talking, and sharing your bed, but her soul's energy, her deepest energetic investment, is slowly, silently being withdrawn. This is not a conscious plan. It is her instinct recalculating the path, constantly exploring new options on a subconscious level, perpetually assessing whether you are still the most aligned choice for her own growth and survival. And this is the point that almost no soul wants to accept. The selection process never, ever ends. There is no finish line, no final exam where you are declared safe. The security you feel is merely the calm before the next storm, the quiet before the next subconscious measurement of your value, your strength, and your alignment with your own divine purpose. And it's not paranoia, it's the fundamental operating system of life's creative force. The very energy that drives a woman to notice a man of high value, a man aligned with his power, is the same energy that subjects him to relentless tests to confirm that his value is real, enduring, and not just a fleeting performance. These tests are not calculated games or deliberate manipulations. They are impulses honed over millions of years of evolution, invisible blades designed to cut away any weakness, any inauthenticity, any vibration that could compromise the sacred mission of life's continuation. In the world of evolutionary psychology, this phenomenon is studied with surgical coldness. The woman instinctively introduces small tensions, subtle challenges, and keen observations to measure your reaction. It could be a casual comment that probes your insecurities, a subtle shift in her attitude to test your emotional stability, or a fleeting comparison to another to gauge your inner strength. And you unknowingly enter an exam you never asked for, an exam with no date, no warning, and no end. And what determines the outcome is not what you say, but the frequency you hold, the energy you convey in your response. The average man misinterprets these tests as personal attacks. He responds with defensiveness, with lengthy justifications, or worse, with desperate compliance, trying to please his way back into a state of safety. But this is precisely where his perceived value collapses. Because what you see as protecting the relationship, instinct perceives as weakness, confirming that you are no longer the sovereign, centered man who first captured its attention. And once that confirmation sets in, the emotional erosion becomes irreversible. Schopenhauer, centuries before these theories were ever formalized, warned of this very dynamic. He understood that love, as the unawakened man imagines it, is a beautiful illusion designed to keep him committed to a process he does not control. What was philosophy to him is now a truth being validated by modern science. Your place in this dynamic is never guaranteed. And the only way to not be devoured by this system is to stop playing by the rules that were imposed upon you from the outside. The unsettling truth is that the erosion of your value doesn't happen in a single dramatic moment, but in hundreds of micro details that you may not even notice. It's in a look that no longer shines with the same light, a laugh that takes half a second longer to appear, a question that doesn't seek an answer but a reaction. By the time you consciously notice the shift, if you ever do, there is often nothing left to recover, because for instinct, replacement is not betrayal. It is simply a natural adjustment, a course correction. And here is a question very few dare to ask themselves. If this selection process never ends, is there any way for a man to not become a disposable piece in this cosmic mechanism? The answer does not lie in convincing her, in making promises, or in constantly proving your worth. That strategy is a slow, agonizing spiritual suicide, because it ties your very existence to an approval you do not control. The true way out is to completely invert the axis of the relationship. It is to go from being the one who is evaluated to being the one who evaluates. And this is not an act of arrogance. It is an act of profound psychological survival. It is about reclaiming your divine sovereignty. It is not enough to simply project an image of independence outward. You must ensure that this independence is real, forged in the fires of your own inner world. Otherwise, it is just another mask, another facade that will eventually crack under pressure. This is where so many men fail. They build a facade of strength, but their core identity still depends on external recognition and validation. It's like an empty wall appearing solid, but collapsing at the very first impact. What Schopenhauer warned, though many have overlooked it, is that the greatest danger is not being manipulated by someone else, but being manipulated by your own emotional deficiencies. Because it is those deficiencies that make you an accomplice to your own entrapment. You unconsciously seek out situations that reaffirm the story in your head, the story that you are not enough, even if those situations ultimately harm you. This is the paradox of attachment. Even when you know something is destroying you, you pursue it, because you fear the void more than you fear the wound. Evolutionary psychology explains that our brains are not designed for a state of constant happiness, but for survival. And in that primal equation, clinging to a source of validation, no matter how toxic, can often seem safer than facing the profound uncertainty of being truly alone. The result is a vicious cycle. You remain trapped in dynamics that drain your energy, justifying with 1,000 excuses what you know, deep down, is an emotional dependence disguised as love. And that is the perfect fertile ground for the instinct we described earlier to act without resistance. Because while you are busy chasing crumbs of affection, the relentless process of selection continues in the background, in the shadows of your awareness. This is where the man who truly wants to break this cycle must make a radical, life-altering decision. He must cut at the very root of his need, severing everything that reinforces his dependence. This is not a matter of pride, it is a matter of profound mental survival. It means facing the brutal, terrifying discomfort of having no one to report to, of not receiving that daily dose of approval you have become addicted to. It is like walking through an emotional desert, where every step tests your endurance and your will to live. And yet, it is precisely in that desert where true immunity to manipulation is forged. When you stop fearing the void, you discover something deeply unsettling that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Most people live in a state of constant desperation, trying to fill that inner void at any cost. And it is that very desperation that makes them predictable, controllable, and easy to manipulate. In stark contrast, the man who learns to live with the void, who understands that solitude is not a sentence but a sacred space for reconstruction and rebirth, begins to operate from a place that instinct both respects and fears. Because he is the man who does not need, and in the high-stakes game of attraction, need is the greatest weakness. And here is the final, crucial connection to everything we've said. The selection process never truly stops. But when you are the one who does not fear being discarded, the entire board changes. You stop competing for a place in her world, and you start deciding if that place is even worthy of your time. You transition from being the evaluated to being the one who evaluates. You go from being measured to being the one who sets the measures. And then, without even realizing it, you are no longer playing in the same system. You have gone from being the prey to becoming a free player. And that is a state of being that very, very few ever experience. And maybe now, after everything we have gone through together, you can start to understand that the real, transformative change doesn't happen when you learn how to win at this game, but when you stop needing to win it at all. Because once you stop depending on the outcome, your mind is finally free to see clearly every movement, every gesture, every silence. You no longer react out of fear, you react out of choice. And that choice is what makes any man impossible to control.